Under a blinding snowstorm in the heart of Montana, a war journalist thought his final story would end tied to a tree, left for dead by the very men he once exposed. But fate had other plans. Out of the storm came a shadow, not a man, but a wolf, the same creature he had saved years ago. What happened next would defy every law of nature. A wild predator became a guardian, a silent protector, willing to face bullets, storms, and death itself to repay an old debt. This is not just a story of survival, it's a story of redemption, loyalty, and the unbreakable bond between man and beast. Before you watch, ask yourself, if kindness can cross species, what excuse do we have to forget it? The dawn crept slowly over the frozen pines of Montana, painting the forest in muted shades of silver and ash. The wind carried the sharp scent of snow and pine sap. A silence so pure it could almost break a man's heart. Noah Grant adjusted the strap of his camera and exhaled, watching his breath drift like pale ghosts in the morning chill. He was 41, broad-shouldered, with a square jaw half hidden beneath a week-old stubble. His hair, dark and streaked with the faint silver of sleepless years, curled at the edges under his beanie. His eyes, a shade of storm grey, held the weariness of someone who had seen too much. For 15 years, Noah had been a war correspondent for the National Herald. He had walked through cities reduced to rubble, filmed mothers cradling lifeless children, and stared down the barrels of guns in places the world had forgotten. It had made him famous and hollow. After Kabul, when a mortar shell took the life of his cameraman, Alex Reed, Noah left the battlefield and never went back. Now, with trembling fingers and a fractured soul, he sought redemption in silence, to capture not death, but the fragile breath of life. Montana's wilderness, endless and unjudging, had become his sanctuary. He had rented an old ranger's cabin at the edge of Glacier Ridge, a place where the nearest town was 30 miles away, and cell signals came and went like ghosts. Inside, the walls smelled faintly of pine smoke and old whiskey, reminders of another man's solitude before his own. That morning, the forest was alive with small signs of movement, the flutter of wings, the hush of falling snow, the faint crack of frozen twigs beneath his boots. Noah crouched near a half-frozen creek, raising his camera toward a family of mule deer drinking cautiously by the water. The light was perfect, the kind of golden hue that made the world seem forgiven. He pressed the shutter once, twice, and then he froze. A few feet ahead, buried under thin snow, was a rusted steel trap, its jaws glinting in the dawn. The snow around it was stained with blood, fresh enough to darken the ice. His heart tightened. He knew this scene too well. He crouched lower, photographing the trap from every angle, already composing the story in his mind. The forgotten forests, America's quiet war against its own wildlife. That's when he heard it, a branch, cracking, too heavy to be a deer. Noah turned. Out from the shadowed ridge stepped 3 men, faces hidden under hunting scarves, rifles slung casually, but not harmlessly. The one in front, tall, lean, and scarred down his left cheek, spoke first. "Well, well. Look who we've got here." His voice was gravel, shaped by cigarettes and bitterness. "The hero reporter from the Herald. Thought we wouldn't recognize you?" Noah's stomach clenched. He remembered that voice. Hank McCready, once a licensed trapper, later exposed by Noah's article for selling animal pelts illegally across state lines. The report had cost Hank his permit and, apparently, his humanity. "Put the camera down," Hank ordered. The other two, younger, jittery, closed in. One of them, a blond man with a missing tooth, looked nervous. The third, heavier and bearded, cracked his knuckles and spat into the snow. Noah tried to reason. "You don't have to do this. I'm not here for you. The rifle butt struck his stomach before he finished. Air whooshed from his lungs. He fell to his knees, gasping, the camera falling into the snow with a dull thud. "You ruined my life, Grant," Hank hissed, gripping his collar. "Maybe it's time you felt what it's like to be trapped." The next minutes blurred. A punch, a kick, a flash of pain, and then the cold bite of rope around his wrists. They tied him to a thick pine tree, the rough bark grinding into his skin. Hank leaned close enough that Noah could smell the whiskey on his breath. "Let the wolves have you," he said, almost gently. "They like the smell of blood." Then they left, their boots crunching into silence. Noah hung there, dizzy, half-conscious. The forest darkened. Snow fell thicker. He tried to move, but every pull tightened the ropes. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. He lost sense of time, of self. All that remained was the sound of his heartbeat and the slow, dying warmth in his hands. When he finally stirred again, it was night. Moonlight spilled through the trees, silver and cold. The forest was eerily still until a sound sliced through the quiet. A low, mournful howl. It came closer. From the fog between the pines emerged a grey wolf, massive and lean, its fur dusted with frost, eyes glowing amber in the moonlight. Noah's pulse quickened. He could see every breath steaming from its nostrils, every ripple of muscle beneath its coat. It moved with the calm precision of a predator that owned the land. The wolf stopped a few feet away, staring at him. Noah froze, afraid even to breathe, but then something shifted. The animal's gaze softened. It tilted its head, studying him, then stepped closer, sniffing the air around the ropes. Noah's breath caught. The moonlight revealed a faint scar along the wolf's right hind leg, a jagged, familiar mark. His mind flooded with memories. Alaska, 3 years ago, a blizzard, a whimpering wolf pup caught in a trap. He remembered carrying it into a tent, stitching its wound by lantern light, whispering to it until it calmed. He had called it Shadow. Now, standing before him, grown and wild, that same creature had returned. The wolf let out a low rumble. Not a threat, but something almost human. It stepped closer, its muzzle brushing the rope, as if recognizing both the man and his suffering. Noah whispered hoarsely, "Shadow, is that you?" The wolf's ears flicked, its eyes glimmered in response. And for the first time in years, Noah felt something stir inside him, hope. The forest was breathing again, slow, heavy, and alive with danger. A curtain of mist had rolled in, swirling around the roots of the pines like restless spirits. Noah could hear his pulse echoing in his ears as Shadow gnawed at the ropes around his wrists, the wolf's breath steaming in the cold air. Each snap of its jaws was a battle between strength and time. A few fibers gave way, fraying under the strain. "Good boy." "Keep going," Noah whispered, his voice roughened by exhaustion and fear. Then, somewhere beyond the trees came the crack of a rifle. A sharp echo cut through the night. Shadow's head jerked up, his amber eyes narrowing. Another shot followed, closer this time, the sound of boots crunching on frozen snow. They were coming back. The poachers. Noah's heart sank. The ropes were still half intact. He yanked against them, skin tearing beneath the friction. Blood trickled down his wrists, glinting black under the moonlight. "Hurry, Shadow," he muttered, half to himself, half to the creature that had once trusted him when it was only a wounded pup. Shadow didn't hesitate. The wolf bit harder, teeth grinding until the last thread gave way. Noah collapsed forward, gasping, clutching his freed arms. His muscles screamed with pain. He barely had time to breathe before Shadow let out a low growl that rumbled like thunder from deep within its chest. From between the trees' movement, 3 figures, the same men who had left him to die. Hank McCready led them, his rugged face twisted in triumph and fury. The moonlight carved sharp lines across his scarred cheek. His breath came out in angry puffs. Behind him trailed Rick Dalton, a lanky blonde in his late 20s, his boyish face marred by anxiety, and a trembling grip on his rifle. Rick had always been the hesitant one, a man trapped between morality and loyalty to the wrong people. The last was Tom Weller, a thick-shouldered brute with a dark beard, silent but brutal, whose eyes held the emptiness of someone who'd long stopped caring about life or death. "Well, well," Hank said, leveling his shotgun. "Didn't I tell you he wouldn't last the night? Looks like the wolves wanted a reporter's dinner." Noah forced himself upright, leaning against the tree, pain blazing down his spine. "You don't need to do this," he rasped. "You already made your point," Hank smirked. "Oh, I'm not doing this for revenge anymore. I'm doing it because you can't stop sticking your nose where it doesn't belong." He stepped closer, boots cracking over ice. "And now," a growl split the air, deep, defiant. Shadow stepped between them, fur bristling, tail low and steady. The moon painted his body silver, his scar catching the light like a mark of destiny. Rick flinched. "Jesus, that thing's huge," he whispered. "Shoot it!" Hank barked. Rick hesitated. "It's just protecting him. Let's go." "Shoot it! Shoot it!" The rifle trembled and Rick's hands, his lips parted, breath shaking, but before he could aim, Shadow lunged, a blur of fur and motion. The wolf hit him square in the chest, knocking him backward into the snow. The gun went off, a wild shot flashing through the darkness. The bullet grazed Noah's shoulder, slicing through his jacket. Pain tore through him, sharp and hot. Tom shouted, raising his weapon, but Shadow spun, snarling, eyes blazing gold. The beast moved with terrifying grace, not reckless, but precise, like a soldier born of instinct. Tom stumbled back, his courage faltering. He fired, missed, and the sound shattered the fragile silence of the forest. Hank cursed, fury overtaking reason. He cocked his shotgun and aimed squarely at the wolf. "Come on, you son of a—" Noah lunged, grabbing a chunk of frozen earth and hurling it at Hank's arm. The shot went wide, hitting a tree and exploding bark into the air. Hank turned, enraged. "You really don't learn, do you?" Noah's vision blurred, but adrenaline drove him forward. He slammed into Hank, the shotgun clattering to the ground. They grappled, fists flying. Hank's strength was overwhelming. Years of hunting and bitterness had hardened him into a creature as ruthless as the forest itself. He landed a blow that sent Noah sprawling into the snow. The world tilted. Blood ran warm down his neck. Then, a flash of silver, a sound half roar, half snarl. Shadow leapt, knocking Hank to the ground. The man screamed as the wolf's jaws clamped down on his arm. Tom hesitated, gun raised, but Noah shouted hoarsely, "Don't! You'll hit your friend!" Rick, still on the ground, groaned and pushed himself up. His wide blue eyes flicked between Noah and Hank. "We should have left," he muttered. He threw his rifle aside, hands trembling. The standoff froze in place, the wounded reporter, the cornered poachers, and the blood-stained wolf standing guard beneath the ghostly moon. Noah reached for the dropped shotgun, his fingers numb and slick with blood. He cocked it once, the metallic click echoing like a verdict. "Walk away," Noah said quietly. His voice shook but carried steel. "Before any more blood hits the snow." Hank stared up at him, panting, pain and pride warring in his eyes. Finally, he nodded to Tom. The bearded man lowered his gun reluctantly. Together they stumbled back, dragging Hank by his good arm. When they vanished into the dark, Noah dropped the shotgun and fell to his knee. Shadow stood beside him, breathing heavily, fur streaked with blood. Some of it his own. The wolf looked at Noah, head tilted, as if waiting for permission to rest. Noah reached out, his hand trembling, and brushed the thick fur at its neck. "Thank you," he whispered. "You saved me again." Shadow pressed his head against Noah's arm. Around them, the forest fell silent once more. The echo of gunfire fading into the wind. The moon slid behind the clouds, and all that remained was man and beast, both broken, both alive. The snowstorm came without warning, swallowing the forest in a curtain of white. The wind screamed through the pines, bending their tall bodies into mournful arcs. Noah Grant could barely keep his eyes open as the gale slashed at his face like shards of glass. The world had dissolved into motion, spinning snow, gun smoke, and the ragged breath of survival. Shadow stood only a few paces away, his fur caked with snow and streaked with blood, the faint steam rising from his body, merging with the mist. The wolf's golden eyes blazed with an intelligence almost human, defiant, weary, yet unbroken. Noah tightened his grip on the rifle he had seized moments earlier, his hands shaking not from cold, but from exhaustion and pain. His shoulder throbbed where the bullet had grazed him earlier. Blood had soaked into the lining of his jacket and was freezing stiff. The last of the gunshots faded, replaced by the haunting silence of the storm. Somewhere behind the veil of snow, the retreating crunch of boots could be heard, Hank and his men vanishing into the blizzard. But they had not gone far. Noah knew their kind. Predators didn't simply walk away. They circled back when they smelled weakness. Shadow growled low, his ears twitching toward the north. Noah turned and glimpsed a faint flicker of light through the storm, a lantern swinging from the belt of a stranger. The figure moved slowly, wrapped in layers of fur and wool, carrying a rifle slung across her back. As she approached, her outline sharpened into the shape of a woman. Sarah Whitaker, the forest ranger who patrolled Glacier Ridge. Sarah was in her mid-30s, tall and lean, her frame hardened by years of mountain patrols. Strands of auburn hair escaped from beneath her fur-lined hat, and her freckled face bore the sharp calm of someone used to confronting danger. Her eyes, green like thawing moss, scanned Noah and the wolf with a blend of shock and instinctive caution. "What the hell happened here?" she shouted over the wind, her voice clear but edged with command. Noah lowered the rifle slightly, his breath ragged. "Poachers. 3 of them. They tied me up. They were here when the storm hit." Her gaze flicked to Shadow, who stood like a sentinel between them. "And the wolf?" "He's with me," Noah said, surprising even himself. Sarah hesitated, studying the animal. There was fear in her eyes, but also a quiet recognition, the kind born from years of working among creatures that most people only saw as monsters. "You've got a strange definition of with you, journalist," she muttered. Still, she slung her rifle off her shoulder and gestured toward the ridge. "There's an old outpost about half a mile north. We'll freeze out here if we stay." Noah nodded weakly. The blizzard howled like a living thing. Together they began to move, trudging through knee-deep snow. Shadow padded close, his paws silent despite his size, his body occasionally brushing Noah's leg, a reminder that even in chaos, he wasn't alone. By the time they reached the outpost, Noah's vision had begun to blur. The building was a squat wooden structure, long abandoned but sturdy against the wind. Inside, Sarah worked quickly. She lit the old fireplace with practiced hands, her movements efficient and precise. Noah watched her through half-closed eyes. The way her fingers moved, the way she kept glancing toward the door as if expecting trouble. There was something about her that reminded him of himself. The quiet tension of someone who had lost too much, but still refused to yield. As warmth began to fill the room, Sarah removed her gloves and crouched beside him. "You're bleeding," she said, pulling a first aid kit from her pack. Her hands were steady but gentle as she cleaned the wound. "You're lucky. 1/4 of an inch deeper, and you'd have been done." Noah grimaced. "Luck's a funny word for tonight." Shadow lay nearby, his breathing heavy. Sarah's eyes flicked toward the wolf again. "He's hurt too." "I know," Noah said softly, but he won't let you near him." Sarah smiled faintly. "Neither would I if I were him." She rose, wrapped a blanket around Noah's shoulders, then stepped closer to Shadow. Her voice lowered, calm and rhythmic. "Easy, boy. I'm not here to hurt you." The wolf's ears twitched, his head lifting slightly. He didn't snarl, didn't move. Just watched her. Noah found himself studying the scene. The ranger and the beast, the firelight flickering across both their faces. It felt like a painting of 2 worlds colliding. The wild and the human, both wounded, both enduring. Then a faint sound outside. The crunch of snow under boots. Sarah's head snapped toward the door. She snuffed the lantern instantly, plunging the cabin into darkness. The only light came from the faint glow of embers. She whispered, "They're back." Noah's pulse quickened. He reached for the rifle, but Sarah pressed a hand to his arm. "Don't move," she breathed. "Let me see." She peered through a crack in the boards. The shadows of 2 figures moved outside, Hank's men. They were circling, looking for shelter, unaware their prey was only a few feet away. Snow lashed against the windows, masking sound. Sarah turned back to Noah, her whisper sharp. If they find us, I'll draw them off. You take the wolf and get to the ridge trail. There's a ranger station 6 miles east." Noah shook his head. "No, we stay together." Their eyes met. Two strangers thrown together by fate and frost. And in that silent exchange, Sarah saw the same fire that had once kept her alive when she lost her husband, a fellow ranger, to an avalanche years ago. It was the look of someone who refused to lose anyone else to the cold. Outside, a gun cocked. Inside, the wolf rose slowly, his body coiled like a bow. The storm roared louder, shaking the walls. The hunter had become the hunted once more. The first light of dawn crept through the cracked wooden shutters of the ranger outpost, painting the room in pale gold. Snow still fell outside, gentler now, blanketing the chaos of the night before. Noah Grant woke with a start, every muscle aching, the smell of wood smoke and iron thick in the air. The fire had burned low, and beside it lay Shadow, his grey fur glistening faintly in the flickering light, chest rising and falling with the slow rhythm of survival. Across the room, Sarah Whitaker sat slumped against the wall, her rifle across her lap, her eyes closed, but alert in that way soldiers and rangers often slept. One ear still tuned to danger. For a moment, Noah simply watched them both. The ranger and the wolf. Symbols of two worlds that weren't meant to meet, yet somehow had. His shoulder throbbed, wrapped tightly in bandages that bore Sarah's steady handiwork. The memories of the night before came flooding back. The shots, the storm, the desperate silence when everything had ended. And beneath it all, the strange peace of knowing he wasn't alone. Outside, the storm had died, leaving behind a world reborn in white. But the peace didn't last long. A distant sound cut through the stillness. The unmistakable thump of helicopter blades. Sarah's eyes snapped open. She stood, brushed snow off her uniform, and moved to the window. "Rescue team," she murmured. "They must have followed the flare signal you sent." Within minutes, the chopper descended near the outpost, stirring snow into spirals. 2 rescue officers emerged, one of them, Ranger Tyler Brooks, a burly man in his 40s with a dark beard and the calm, solid presence of someone used to pulling bodies from avalanches. His uniform bore years of wear, and his weathered face carried both discipline and warmth. The other was Elena Cruz, a paramedic barely 30, small and quick, with sharp, dark eyes that missed nothing. Her olive skin contrasted against the blinding snow, and strands of black hair escaped from her beanie as she knelt beside Noah almost before he could speak. "Elena Cruz, medical response," she said briskly, voice edged with authority, but underlined by compassion. "You're lucky to be alive, Mr. Grant." Her hands moved swiftly, checking his pulse, examining the wound. "Shoulders healing, mild hypothermia, chumdai. You'll make it." Tyler looked at Sarah and Shadow in turn. "We got your emergency beacon around dawn," he said. "Dispatch thought it was just another lost hiker report. Didn't expect this." His gaze lingered on the wolf. Shadow's golden eyes met his, unblinking, unafraid. Sarah stepped forward. "He's no threat," she said firmly. "If it weren't for him, we'd be dragging a body bag out instead of a man." Tyler gave a low whistle, shaking his head. "Hell of a story." Noah tried to sit up, wincing. "You have no idea," he muttered. "He saved my life, twice." Eleanor smiled, faintly. "Seems like the universe sent you a guardian, Mr. Grant." The helicopter ride to the ranger base was brief but surreal. From the window, Noah watched the world stretch out below, a wilderness of endless white ridges and frozen rivers. Shadow sat beside him on the floor of the chopper, calm despite the noise, his gaze fixed outward, as if memorizing the land he had defended. Sarah sat across, helmet on her lap, wind tousling her auburn hair. There was something unspoken between them. Gratitude, perhaps, or recognition that fate had thrown them together for a reason neither could explain. At the base, veterinarians examined Shadow, treating the gash on his flank with careful precision. The wolf tolerated their presence with surprising stillness, though his eyes never left Noah. When they were finished, Sarah approached Noah, her expression softening. "They'll release him back into the reserve once he's stable," she said. "He'll be safe there. Protected." Noah nodded, swallowing the ache that rose in his chest. "That's all I could ask for." Before Shadow was taken, Noah crouched beside him, resting his hand against the thick fur behind his ears. The wolf's fur was warm, coarse beneath his palm, alive with strength. "You kept your promise," Noah whispered. Shadow blinked slowly, then pressed his muzzle against Noah's arm. The contact was brief, silent, final. Then the wolf was led away, disappearing through the snow-covered path toward freedom. Days later, Noah's story appeared on the front page of the National Herald. The Wolf's Promise, a story of survival, redemption, and the wild heart of Montana. The accompanying photograph, taken from his last intact memory card, showed Shadow standing on a snow-capped ridge, the first rays of sunlight catching his fur like fire. The world saw a wolf, but Noah saw something deeper, a soul unbroken by nature's cruelty, a reflection of everything good still left in man. The story spread across the country, sparking conversations about wildlife preservation and the fragile balance between man and wilderness. Donations flooded into the Glacier Ridge Reserve. Sarah became a quiet hero among rangers, though she refused every interview. As for Noah, he left the front lines of journalism for good. His words no longer spoke of war or loss, only of grace, courage, and the small miracles born from kindness. Months later, he returned to the clearing where it all began. The snow had melted, and spring whispered through the forest. He stood before the same tree that once bound him, and listened. The forest was alive again. Birdsong, wind, the distant rush of a thawed river. Then faintly, from somewhere beyond the ridge, came a single howl, long, low, and familiar. Noah closed his eyes, smiling through tears. "Some bonds," he whispered, "never break. Sometimes God doesn't send angels with wings, he sends them on 4 legs, silent, loyal, and pure." That night in the Montana wilderness wasn't just a rescue. It was a miracle, a reminder that even in the coldest storms, God's grace finds its way. Through creatures, through kindness, through the quiet promises we once made and forgot. If a wounded wolf can remember mercy, then maybe we too can learn to forgive, to protect, and to love a little more, in our homes, in our families, in this fragile world we share. May God bless you wherever you are tonight. If this story touched your heart, please share it, leave a comment, and subscribe, so together we can keep spreading stories of faith, kindness, and the unseen miracles that walk among us every day, because every act of compassion is already a prayer answered.